Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Synchronic Saturdays with Meghan and Crystal. How's it going, Crystal?
It's going well. How about you?
Good. Crystal's just like sitting back with like her bun, just like resting. Like I love it.
So actually we're doing, wait. I just tried to look nice and like look different every week. So.
Sorry. That's hilarious. Sorry. Me bringing up something in the SE and Crystal not knowing how to react.
Literally. Because like you said that, I was like, ooh, I wonder what all the SE users are going to say. Like, oh, you look different than you did last time. I'm like, yeah.
No, it's fine. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about introverted intuition. And so, I was just telling Crystal before this, I was like, wait a minute, like since I use NI, aren't I supposed to lead? I don't know what to say because I don't really have any questions about it. Because the first thing I want to say is that as someone that uses introverted intuition, it just comes so naturally that like it's so hard to express what it even is. It's like confusing for me to even notice when people don't use it, but until I like notice that they're not using it, and I'm just like, you're missing the point.
It's pretty easy to like notice the opposite because NE notices both sides of the intuitive coin.
The main thing I notice whenever people don't use NI is that I think that they're missing the point. But then people will ask me like things like, well, what is the point? How do you know the point? And I'll be like, I don't know.
There a point?
There.
That's what NE asks. NE, it doesn't think there's a point.
What?
Which is, like NE doesn't think there's ever a point. They think there's multiple like points to life or just a topic or a discussion. So whenever an NI user is like, what's your point? I'm like, I don't know. I kind of just said it. Like it's how I feel whenever an NI user does that. So
I don't know if I agree. I mean, I don't disagree, but I don't know.
Which almost illustrates it. You're like, I don't really get what your point was.
I mean, yeah.
I
don't know. I mean, it would make sense if like perhaps SI and NI have points, but I don't know how to, I don't know what you just said. I'm sorry.
Anyways, so yeah, like when Meghan was like, oh, shouldn't I be leading? But I don't really know, like I don't have any questions or whatever. I'm like over here with NE thinking, oh my God, I have so many things I could say about NI, blah, blah, blah. Like,
okay, so I'm going to just kind of let her go off on a soapbox and then I'll be here to correct and then I'll also share some things. Sorry.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think NI is like a very mysterious function. Like NI is like, it just seems like it just will randomly like know things. Like it will seem like there's not much like I just think anyone.
And that's what's so weird for me. And pause for a sec. She says NI randomly knows things. And I think that what's so interesting about both of the intuitive functions, so NE and NI, is that whenever it's described by the other by the person that uses the opposite, it is so unlike the experience that's what causes people to type incorrectly as NPs and NJs. Because she says that and I'm like, whoa, I don't relate to that. I don't do anything random. And so
and then
a lot of people might test, a lot of people that use NI won't relate to like the descriptions of NI and like vice versa, I would say, because I always know what I'm reacting to and I always can point to like my intention and my motive of things. But it seems random, I'd say, only to people that don't have SE.
Yeah, like I would say like any user will describe NE pretty well, but describing NI, it's kind of like you have to kind of guess what their experience is almost. So I just know that like I'm just explaining how I see NI from the perspective of someone who does not use it.
Well, keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, it completely baffles me. I guess it just seems kind of like NI users always have like kind of a smirk or like a knowing, like kind of in their tone or how they carry themselves. Like they just seem very in their own world and no one can take that away from them. And in a way, like to me, okay, it's random because I don't understand it, not because they were trying to be random. So I was trying to illustrate that it's super mysterious and that it's super, it's like an enigma, I guess. Like,
why do you think that it seems so mysterious from your perspective? And how would you say that NE is different than that?
Gosh, it's like NJs just kind of talk as if they know what they're talking about because they do. And I'm kind of like used to like when I'm around NE users, they're always slightly bullshitting more than they actually know. And
I think that because NJs don't share their idea unless they've decided on that idea. And NE users will sort of talk about different possibilities. But NI, once it gets to the point, and this is true with all introverted functions, we'll get into that later. But like when something is an introverted function, if it is coming to the surface, then it has had lots of time ruminating in ways that you can't see. And so that's why if an NJ will talk about something as if they know it, it's because that idea has been planted and ruminating for a long time, and you aren't seeing the process of it. But when NE users are brainstorming, they are like, oh, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, and you're like,
we throw things at the wall and see what sticks.
And you're able to watch how an NE user comes to their conclusion because they will have that entire process
all up out there
for you to see. And so I guess that's why it is mysterious, is that you don't see that process.
It seems like NI users aren't willing to just kind of guess and check their impressions. They'll like quietly hold them within them for so long. So sometimes I think from an NE user's perspective, those people don't even seem intuitive like NJs because they're so quiet about what is in their intuition. But when they finally speak, it's so wise and insightful and will hit all the right notes that like my NE might have always like felt, but like not.
What do you mean by guess and check?
Gosh, I feel like I'm like attempting to like use NI to like see my impression of NI, and that's why it's not like coming out right. How do I say this? Like, I just think I'm like,
it's funny. I'm just like learning about NE though as you're talking, because you're saying what we don't do, and I'm like, oh, people do that anyway.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, like, what if this was true? And then an NI user will not engage at all unless they've thought about it before. For some
What
reason.
do you mean?
Like, and what if this is like, I don't know, like when I talk about like, oh, like what if no one actually like experiences blah blah blah, and then like and like I guess I'll just randomly like start like saying whatever, and NJ won't react to me unless they have like a super strong opinion suddenly. Is what it seems. Like they'll just like it's not their thought process that's random, but what they express seems out of nowhere because they suddenly feel like expressing it because they had a strong enough NI impression about something I said enough to say it. And I realize I'm talking in generalities because I cannot for the life of me dig up an example of a time that I saw like, quote, your NI in action, because normally when I'm talking to you, I'm just so aware.
Actually, pause right now. I feel like I'm totally using NI now because you could probably, if you weren't paying attention, scroll back a bit in this video if you're watching the video version and see how my eyes have just been kind of going off in the distance. I've been literally trying to piece together what she's saying and into something that is consistent. And I'm not saying that what you're saying isn't true. And that's another thing you have to remember, like, people use their introverted functions together as a pair and their extroverted functions together as a pair. And so what I'm doing is slightly different than how an NTJ would do it. But like, so yeah, it is a little bit riddled with like my NI, NTI trying to find the consistency of what she's saying with truth, but also with my perception. But the way NI works is that she's saying a bunch of different things about NI, and I'm trying to bring it down and see like whether or not I see the same way or whether or not it's even possible for it to be this way and this way at the same time, like things like that. And it's like,
yeah, see, no one would know that that's what's going on because it's just quiet. Like,
yeah, and it's funny because I don't know, like, yeah, like I wasn't like interacting with your idea really. I was just like,
oh my god, yeah, it's so funny how it was like meta happening as I was explaining it. Like, yeah. I was like, oh, users will just go randomly quiet.
And like, honestly, what she was all saying, from my perspective, I was very discombobulated by everything she was saying because it didn't really make sense to me with my vision of NI. Like, not that she's wrong, but it was like giving me new things to think about. And I don't know. There's an ENTP I know that, shout out if you know who you are listening to this, who has said before that certain INFJs are boring. And I would be like, they're not boring. Have you spoken to them? And then like
she tried.
And then the ENTP was like, oh, I'm too bored to like try and force them to talk to me. And like, oh, like I've been in a group situation with them and they haven't, interacted with my ideas. And
yeah, oh my God.
And I was like, well, have you asked them a question? And then, or like, have you like directed anything at them? And then the ENTP was like, no, like, why would I? Like, that seems like a lot of work.
As someone who's interacted with, as someone who is BFFs with ENTP and who has interacted with many of the same INFJs, she's roasting. I totally see what she's talking about.
No, but okay. And she said that INFJs seem like wallflowers, or at least these specific people that I think are super interesting. And see, it's funny, like for me as an extrovert, like I don't know, like not all ENTPs are going to say this about INFJs, but I don't think that I would have the same issue with an ENTP, because I will just sort of share what's on my mind.
Yeah, you'll use like FE to like gloss over the fact that
people think though that I'm more basic though when they first meet me, because I don't just like share my wise insights right off the bat to just anyone. And like there are a lot of ENFJs out there that you probably know as like socialites, or like people that are like big into networking or have a lot of friends. Maybe if you're in a college, I know a lot of ENFJs that were like in sororities and really high up in like philanthropy positions or whatever. Like you might think that they're basic because they might just small talk with you, or they might just be friendly, but you have to get them to actually open up and share like how they perceive the world. But just one more thing on this is like, I think that it's like these INFJs that the ENTP has found to be wallflowers. I'm just like, well, if you ask them a question of like, oh, what do you think about this thing that's going on right now? They're going to share something really wise and interesting. And NI is not just going to share that with just anyone, especially people that don't seem interested. You know what I mean? And a lot of times NE users don't seem interested in those things. They're just talking about stuff and they want people to all interact with their ideas back and forth with them. But
that is what we want. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's like NJ. So from my impression of NJs, NJs are always the hardest for me to like nail down, because.
What do you mean by nail down?
I guess I just like nail down as in like their type or what they're about or what they value. Like I just literally will never have a good read on them. So I didn't befriend a lot of NJs or until like later in college. Like after I started understanding type, they were easier to spot. But before that, I was just like, didn't feel like I would connect with them like very well. And I think it is like NE having like an expectation for the NI user to like engage with them. And if they don't seem interested, then they'll like kind of flit away. I think like SPs.
What do you mean by engage?
See, okay, that's an example of NI. And I go deeper into what this word means to you. And to me, I'm just thinking, that was just the best word I could think of.
The reason why I know another NJ is because our conversations will be like, you know what I mean by that? And they'll be like, yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I like never have any trouble knowing if someone's another NJ, because especially NFJs will have little bids of like, you know what I mean? Or like, am I making sense to you? Or like, do you agree? Or like, you know what I mean?
You've given me those bids, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? But
she doesn't ever respond to my bids. Sometimes I'm talking.
Like you'll be like, so what are your thoughts? And I'm like, wasn't I sharing thoughts by speaking? And you're like, no. I was like, what?
I will say something to her, and then like she won't interrupt me with like a yeah, I know what you mean, or like a yeah, that makes sense, or anything like that.
I'm like listening to the whole thing to see if there's anything at the end, and I'm like, wait, what? What? Wait, repeat that.
I think it's kind of FE of me as well that I like want her to say something, but it's like
I don't know which one it is.
There's been several times with NFJs and NTJs where like I will kind of ramble about a perception I have, trying to wrap my brain around it, and then they will kind of be like, yeah, I know what you mean. Like whether they're a TJ or an FJ, it really doesn't matter. They like see the same perspective that I'm seeing, and like
yeah, like maybe like commenting on like societal dynamics or something, like something you see like as an epidemic of some sort. I think
here's
NJs
an example. Like, here's a very specific example that I've tried to explain this thing to you and you don't quite get it, that only NJs at this point in my life have been able to get it. Is I have been having this issue with people, or I've been having this issue internally that I've tried to share with some friends to see their thoughts. Is that on one hand, I'm really spiritual and I'm into all this woo-woo, like metaphysical stuff. And on the other hand, I really care about truth and I really care about my ideas being accepted and I care about science. And I have felt like in between these two worlds, and I'm not sure where I want to put my foot in and land and say, this is who I am. I don't know if I want to be like, you know what? Sorry, science, this is what I believe. Or if I want to be like, you know what? I believe in this stuff, but I'm a scientific person and this is what I'm going to say. And I'm going to believe these things in my personal life. I'm not sure where I want to land. And almost every time that I share that with an NJ, they're like, I know what you mean. And then they'll like kind of explain like, yeah, like I felt like this in my business, or like I felt like this in my personal life. I wasn't sure how much this way or this way. And I don't know if there's something about NI and seeing things as a spectrum. Do you think that there's a connection with NI and seeing things as a spectrum? Maybe
what do you
not.
mean by see things as a spectrum? Like a spectrum of what? Like,
I don't know, but
intuitiveness?
Is what I just said confusing to you?
It took me a while to realize that I don't identify with that, because I was imagining like all the NJs I know agreeing with you and how they like experience that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, no, that sounds like how an NI user is. But I didn't think, do I do that? I'm like, hell no, I don't do that is my answer. I don't like things like connected. The
whole thing about develop your personal brand, develop your vision, and NI is the best function for all these things about personal brand or branding.
Yes. And let me say something, because like,
yeah,
the opposite is I do not get what the fuck a brand is. Like, I'm like, I am many things. Anything can be anything. Are we supposed to pin it down as like one thing that's gonna encompass it somehow? Like SE and I don't get how they could do that. But I think that concept was thought of by like an NTJ or some shit.
And what's interesting is like, I think that SI does something similar, and I know I'm kind of using some business metaphors. I hope that this makes sense to some of you guys, but it's like SI will say things like, oh, you have to have a niche. You have to decide one thing that you are. NI is like, no, you don't have to decide one thing. You just have to make sure that your energy is cohesive, or that who you are.
SI is like, I am a housewife. I am a businessman. I am a blah, blah, blah. And NI is like, I am a creative.
Here's like a more example. Okay, it's like Amazon is Amazon. It has a brand. It doesn't just offer books. It doesn't just offer whatever. They started off with like the sort of SI niche of we're just going to offer books. McDonald's has a SI, like we offer burgers. That's what we do. I mean, like they have other things too, but they're like, we're the fast food. We're the leading fast food thing. This is just what we are. Very stubborn in like an SI way. But NI is like, we're Amazon or we're Google. Like, what does that mean? It means so many different SI things. But to NI, they are that thing. Does that make sense?
You just said the same thing. Like, they are that thing. And I'm like I got you until your finish was just, wait,
they have a very unified vision for what they are, who they are. They don't have to have a very solid thing in the sensory world because their vision is.
So how about this? Like, the NI of those businesses is they transform, and so they're still relevant. They still grow, and by that logic, NI users are more aware that people are always transforming. Maybe a brand.
Maybe that wasn't what I was saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but it just wasn't what I was saying.
I don't get what you were saying. And this is interesting because I feel like in the other 3 episodes we've had, we talked about SI, FI, and TI. It was a lot easier to talk about, but for some reason with NI, it's a lot harder to like get across what it is or give examples.
Well, that reminds me of something, is that So I was just saying that I can recognize another NJ because I'll say things about my life and I'll be like, you know what I mean? Or they'll be like, oh, I get what you're saying. And a lot of times they'll cut me off before I'm done talking by letting me know that they get what I'm trying to say. And it's really helpful because I don't have to really explain what I'm saying because they already see what I'm seeing.
I feel like I do that with like FPs. Like when I talk about FPs.
And the reason why it's nice to have those friends, that's great, but it's not very challenging if I were to just be hanging around with NJs because the truth is NJs, something we have to know is that there's a reason why we're misunderstood. And the reason is that we don't explain ourselves very well. Right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, we don't. And
I get so mad when I'd like be like
we rely on the fact that we would rather talk to people that just are seeing what we're seeing. And like, here's some other examples of like NI sort of things is like, if I was just to say like, society's changing, man, you know, like I'm going to have to change the way that I succeed because everything in the business world is changing and everything in culture is changing. And so why would I be playing by the same rules as the rules that we played by then? Like if I was just to say that, any NJ would be like, yes, okay. And then they would talk about how they react to that sort of perception. But NPs are the ones that are like, wait. NPs will be like, wait, you were just talking about business and then you were just talking about your life and then you're talking about society. Wait, what? And like a lot of times NPs will be like, wait, what are you saying? Like you, especially, okay, NTPs will be like, you need to create a better argument because you weren't really convincing me. And like, that's why I really appreciate NTPs is because they really challenge me, especially since my TI like gets where they're coming from. Is like, you're right. I didn't create a very good argument. I just was expecting other people to see the world the way I do. And NJs, it would be really beneficial for us if we realize that not everyone is seeing the same picture. We have to figure out how can we communicate that picture that we're seeing in a way that other people understand us, or else we're going to feel misunderstood like forever.
Yeah. What I would say is like, to me, sometimes I feel like NJs kind of like wallow in feeling special, like out of sync. And NPs almost kind of embrace it. They're like, yeah, it's fun to be like the weird one. But I think NJs do not revere that as much. Like they don't like feeling like people don't understand their points. And you know, like
because it's so hard like to explain.
Yeah. Like I would say I feel like a parallel, not the exact thing, but I also have trouble sharing like what my FI really feels in a deep way, and maybe that's just how it is with the types and that introverted function that's really strong. And like, being around the person that doesn't use that is like, oh, it's so like wrenching because often like I'll like say something FI and your FE will be like, huh? And I know I do the same with my NE and your NI.
Well, something I just realized is that SI users have a hard time sharing like their secrets kind of, or like SI users, whether especially SJs, they will have to trust you a lot before they can share things like, oh, my dad died. Oh, like my past relationship history. Oh, like their past experiences that really impacted them. SI users, that takes a bit for them to share. But what is interesting is that NJs will be the sort of people to tell you right off the bat, like, about like their past experiences, because that's like not hard. Like that's not like a really hidden deep thing.
Yeah,
and so
like
people think I'm just like oversharing.
And then like I think SJs find it funny to like just talk about like random like, oh, like what ifs, like if NPs spur them to, but they'll have a hard time being like candid with that. So I totally agree with that. I think NJs have a hard time sharing what they really like believe that's really esoteric, because they kind of fear not belonging because they're J's, right? Like NJs have like FE and TE that kind of wants to flow with the collective.
It's the tribe.
Yeah, and NI isn't as visible to the collective. And so they're going to be like, oh, like, hey, am I the one that feels this way? And be like relieved when an NJ doesn't.
That's a really good point about NPs and NJs in general, is that all NPs have FI or TI to make them feel individual and to be okay with being like weird in a way, because they're like individuals. And all people with strong NI are trying to apply it to this wide sweeping thing of like either how people work or how things work.
Yeah. And sometimes what I think is sometimes NI users have like this inner turmoil where they feel like their NI conflicts with their FE and TE, like in a way, because I think society doesn't always talk outright about the NI of trends that are happening, or at least they try to talk about it, but they don't hit the nail on the head the way NI can. So I think a lot of NJs might feel just super like swimming against the current just by existing, because they see like they have like a feeling of this is right, this is wrong about the way society is moving and such. Sometimes like they'll be like, I don't feel like that person's like aligned with the right vibration. Like I think a lot of NJs
I don't know, I think that we're conflating too many things that is not really what NI is.
Well, okay, I also think I'm talking around the point. I'm just speaking like things that I see with NE. Like this is also how I would feel if we were talking about FI and you were leaving conversation with FE.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, like you have to remember, for those of you that don't, and see, I really want this video or podcast to make sense for people that aren't sure if they use NI or NE. I want it to bring some clarity. And so I know that that's really like hard, but a lot of you guys, if you are, the easiest way to know is like, if you kind of are getting where I'm coming from, like you probably use NI. And if you like understand where she's coming from, you're probably using NE. And like,
if you're like listening to this and you're like, what are they talking about? Then you're probably an NE user. But if you can kind of relate to Meghan and that kind of struggle of like getting all of this amazing intuition in your head out there into the open, you're probably an NI user.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And okay, it's like I also hesitate to like agree or disagree for certain things, because I also want all of my ideas that I say to be like bulletproof in the NI. NI and like in the SE. So a couple things. The reason why I think it's such a strong possibility that if you relate to me, you use NI, and if you relate to her, you use NE, is because the judging functions, the judging functions control what you think and feel about things, but they don't control what you see. And if you like are on the same wavelength as me, you probably are using NI, like no matter what your judging function is. And like same like with her, you're probably using NE, because judging functions can cause arguments, but and disagreements. But different judging functions won't make you like on a different wavelength than the person. Like if you're at least reading the same book, like on the same page, you know, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like, and also like, I keep in mind, you don't have to agree or disagree. I'm just trying to like illustrate like what I see, so people who don't use
and the way that you're illustrating what you see is so NE.
Yeah, like, but also, like, I just know that there's so many NTPs and NFPs are going to be watching this and be so confused. So I'm literally trying to take things you're saying and bring it to the group. And
okay, say it.
It's like, no, I was just speaking on what I've been doing when you kind of like, I don't know if I agree or disagree with that. I'm like, I'm not asking you to, I'm just trying to apply commenting on that. But anyways, to speak to your concept, I think it's completely true. Like, I noticed that when people get into internet arguments, like when the judging functions are at play, a lot of times they at least are kind of like, there's the same amount of energy being exerted, like people are getting riled up either way. But if you're just sitting there kind of confused, that to me is like a perceiving thing. And so I totally agree. Like if people,
that's why I fight with NTPs so often more than any other type, is because you guys are missing the point. Like you just are missing the point.
And the point is your NI point.
Yes.
They can't NE digest it.
Oh, wait a second. So whenever I say like you're missing the point, that's like automatically going to make an NE to be like, wait, are you saying that your point is the only point?
Yes, that's what it sounds like.
And
it sounds like something appears
and I'm
like,
saying, no.
You qualify the point of what I was saying. You say the point, and we're like, is there a point? Like,
no, and I'm saying no. I'm saying my point. You can have a point, but I'm saying my point. And that's why I think that NE users are so guilty of making straw man arguments all the time. saying, you're saying this is this. No, I'm not saying that. You missed the point. And you feel free to disagree with me, but don't tell me about what I was saying. Like, that's like the thing that I always.
And I think we also expect an NJ, or I think NFJs maybe more than NTJs, because it doesn't matter.
And the reason why I'm saying I butt heads with NTPs is because we both are using the same judging functions. So it's gonna like grind our gear, like we're gonna just like butt heads like even more, because like they're just completely seeing a different picture.
I think NTPs will just kind of expect you to be able to readily have said your point, instead of what often happens with NE and I'm like over here trying to guess at what you're saying to get you to speed up talking about it.
And I hate when people are guessing at what I'm saying, because I think that it's filtered through their SI, their experience. Whenever NE users are trying to guess at what I'm saying, it is almost always biased, in my opinion, based on their experience. In NI, you have to remember it's the complete opposite of introverted sensing. And so it does not care about your past experience. It completely takes that out.
Well, we're not trying to assume we know you, but we don't know anything because you haven't really made sense to us quite yet. So we're just trying to provoke you into saying something that will click. And I think as an NFP, it's easier for me to like have patience throughout it, because my FI is like, well, there's something to their experience because everyone has a valid experience. But NTP might be like, are you stupid?
Yeah. And I think NFPs are just likely to be interested in people in general, that it's like they're more willing to wait for me to
But we are no less confused than NTP. We just have more patience to wait for the person to show us what their point is instead of interrupting them and getting self-righteous, which is what I think TI users can tend to do. So yeah, okay. Let me try to get on my soapbox here for the NPs. Because I think any NJ who's watching this will kind of like get it, but I think NPs will be here like kind of nitpicking it.
You're right.
Like, I think it might be more beneficial for me to like share as an NP how I came to sort of, but not really.
Yes, it would be more beneficial, because I really think like, okay, there's a lot of mistypes going on, and there are NJs that type as NPs, but what in my experience, most of the NJs that mistype as NPs, just this is a side hobby. They aren't really into this. They haven't read about it. When NJs actually read about it, they tend to really recognize NI right off the bat.
Yes, that is so true. I've never seen an NJ who likes MBTI mistype themselves.
Yes, exactly. Like there are
I think so strongly. That's not possible.
Yeah, I've met so many ENFJ and INFJ friends that have typed as INFPs and ENFPs, and the moment I start explaining the functions to them is the moment that they switch. And it might take a minute because they're going to have to think about what they believed about themselves and then transferred it. An INFJ friend of mine, she had to, her Twitter bio said INFP, and she had to delete it and change it to something else and like wait a few weeks before she felt comfortable changing it to INFJ. She knew she was an INFJ.
Oh, that's so weird. I'd be like, whatever, I guess I'm an INFJ.
Well, the moment I started explaining NI to her, the moment she started getting it, but she had to like really switch to the perspective where NE will be like, okay, I'll try this one on. I'll try this idea on.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, but like
it goes on for size. We never. That's why we seem non-committal, because we aren't committing to ideas. NJs live and die by those worldviews.
I'm about to let Crystal get on her soapbox, because it is such a huge issue of NPs thinking that they're NJs that it literally. I don't care if you're wrong about your type. That doesn't bother me. But it kind of ruins the entire movement and the entire intellectual credibility of Myers-Briggs and of personality type whenever it is not something that is bulletproof, that you can say, oh, all people of this type are like this and all people of this type are like this. And I guess every NE user, hold on a sec, every NE user listening is going to be like, but there's always going to be differences between groups. Yes, you're right, there is, but there's also got to be something that is the same, or else it's not worth grouping these people up. Why would you group people up unless there was something that binded them together that they all shared?
That's actually true too. That's also your TI being like, it has to be actually accurate. It can't just be like,
there's got to be something that binds it together. And the more people are mistyping as NJs on the internet, then the more confusing it is for people to learn, because it's not going to make sense. So go ahead.
Also, whatever I say, if you have a protest about it, just keep in mind, like, I realize I'm gonna have to ask you to like bite your tongue a little bit. Well, actually,
Okay, I will.
Unless you have something to say where you're like, actually, it's this. Like, if you have the actual
Okay.
correction,
Got
then
it.
give it to me. But if you don't, and it's gonna like derail it.
Okay,
Like,
I'm metaphorically popping my popcorn. I love
okay,
that.
cool. All right. Well, what I will say to piggy off what Meghan was saying about the need for people to type accurately and why this NJ and NP thing is such a problem is I think it taints the idea of what NI even is. Like, we have spent so long trying to talk about it, and I still feel, as an NP, actually feel like I don't really understand NI, and perhaps I never will. And I think my personal development came when I finally accepted that I will always be wrong about, or not always, but sometimes often be wrong about guessing what NI is, and I should let an NJ take the mic. I think NPs.
Wait, I pause really quick. I'm sorry. I'm not protesting, but this is actually a huge difference between NE and NI, is that NI knows that my perspective is my perspective and that there are things that I won't know because I'm only me and I can only see as so far as I can see. But I think that NE is so expansive that it believes that it could know everything in theory. And I think that NE users need to back off a little and realize that you aren't going to really know unless you use that function. But I think that no matter what type you are, if you use NI, you have some sort of inherent understanding that like you have a perspective and that other people have a perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think NE users can sometimes lack the awareness to be humble that they don't know everything. Just because they get a glimpse of it does not mean they see the whole like 9 yards.
NE users always expect themselves to know everything, which is
because we get a peek of everything. So then we get overwhelmed because we get like a little like we get to see what NI is more, but we don't understand it because we aren't it. And I think that like NPs don't really not just understand, but they don't accept that. Because I think we like to think that anything is literally possible, but I've had to learn so much more patience with NI and to not get ahead of myself so much, because I really had to learn that just because someone isn't saying something does not mean that they didn't hear me or that they don't care about what I have to say. It just means that maybe there's something good that's down the road if we get on the same page. And so whenever an NJ and NP are on the same page, it's like an amazing explosion. But
the reason why NPs do this is because of your lack of understanding of extroverted sensing. You think that if you can see something, that it's the same information that you can get from being it and from embodying it.
Which is not true.
No. Yes. And to bring a cultural thing in is like with racism and sexism. You don't know what it's like to be Black unless you're Black. You don't know what it's like to be a woman unless you're a woman. That is something that NI understands, no matter what you think about that, no matter what your social commentary is about that. NE and SI users will conflate the fact that, oh, I've heard an experience, or, oh, I've researched this, and think that that's all that there is to know sometimes. Maybe I'm being a little harsh there.
No,
but I think it's accurate. I mean, and NPs can realize that, but only when you've tapped into and developed your NI. I think that NI knows that in order to really know all of the depths of your intuition, you have to embody it in the SE.
To know, you must be.
Yes, you have to be. You have to be it, have the SE experience of it to know. There are some things you can't know unless you are in the SE.
Which I realize we sound like we're like throwing Zen Buddhism terms around, but also in all seriousness, I do think a lot of like Zen Buddhism was founded on NI, like the NI of we're all connected, we are, or something. And that was so weird for me to like hear about as a kid. I'm like, which mean we are, we could, we would, we did it, like what if? I think like NI was really so committed to its philosophies and ideas, however subconscious they may be at times, they cannot even speak them into the external world until they are beautifully meant to be said. And I think NE users are like, hello, like say something, like, and I've heard so many, I think it'd be interesting to break down a little bit some of the things I've seen NPs say about you on the internet, or things that maybe I've thought, or things I know our peers have
that
thought.
would be really interesting. But I also want to say too, really quick, that I realize that maybe NE thinks that because everything could be, that there must be also like the fruits of that at the other end of the could be. Whenever just because everything could be, it doesn't mean that everything
will
be, or that there even is all, I don't know. I can't really finish that sentence, I realize, but.
No, I totally know what you mean. And I think it's because my NI gets what you mean, but I can't say what you mean either. I can NE style comment on the fact that
there's not like the energy there. Like, yes, aliens could come down right here, like just hang out next to me right now within a few seconds. That could be. But is there the energy there to make that happen? And that's SE. SE knows what energy is there, the force, the source.
Biggest thing, yes. NI users do not think everything is literally possible, and I think NE users can get trapped in that sometimes.
Yeah, and NI users will explore possibilities that are unpopular, but like NJs, you might look like kind of an NP because you're exploring possibilities, but NJs, they explore like unpopular possibilities that are, NJs will come in and say, hey, all of you guys are saying that this isn't possible, but in fact it is possible. Like, but we aren't like expanding the brain of like, oh, everything's possible. But an example of an NJ would be like, guys, solving poverty is possible. You guys are saying that it's impossible, but actually we do have like the actual resources.
It's like real world phenomenon that are widespread in the SE, as opposed to an NP just sitting around kind of like being like, oh, like what if actually this, like, and they take like different SI bits of the world and they turn them around.
NJs will notice.
Real world application.
NJs will notice whenever people have limited their possibilities and will expand the possibilities to the SE, to what's right in front of you. But so many people will limit their possibilities because things haven't been before in their experience.
Yeah.
They'll think that things aren't possible because they haven't happened before. And NI users will expand it to the extroverted sensing of what's right in front of you.
Yeah, something to note, I just realized, is it does come down to NPs are going to get NJs wrong a lot because they don't have SE, because I'm thinking of the opposite, or I'm thinking of SJs who also use NE and SI but have slightly better SE than NPs. I feel like so many SJs I know will just talk about NJs like, oh, they're just a little weird, you know? Like they'll have like a radar. Like I think SJs, and you know, SJs, if you're out there, please comment, please.
SJs.
Like, they'll know NPs and NJs are different. They'll just like be able to sense it. And I think that's SE. And NPs are just like, everyone's the same.
SJs will just say like, oh, you're weird. You just have your own way of doing things. Like you're making it harder on yourself. But NPs will like be like, she's a fraud, or she's lying, or I don't know. Like,
yeah, SJs will just like let it be, kind of, you know. And I think SPs too. They're like, yeah, weirdo, whatever.
Yeah, but it's like, I guess what I want to. Sorry, I'm like getting worked up. It's like, yes, like NPs maybe won't understand NI, but at the same time, NJs are way harder on NPs because we don't understand what it's like to feel so limited by our past experiences. And to have that in your brain all the time, like influencing how you see things. So.
Yeah, like, okay, it's weird to me before I get into the people insulting you on the internet all being NPs thing that I've noticed as an NP. I think it's interesting to me how all NJs will just so disregard or even forget something traumatizing or big that happened to them. Like being abused or being like fucking, like having people die. They'll kind of be like, that's life. Like, in this way, that's so different than how SJs or NP, like anyone with SI is. They'll just be like, life keeps moving forward. And they won't say it in an emotional way. They'll legitimately so strongly believe that life is going to keep going. Like, and I think sometimes for me, I can feel like my world's stopping because this one thing is holding me back. And NJs will like be like, like kind of shrug it off and like go along. Maybe they'll need to process their trauma, but they're so good at, I think, getting over things by like having the faith in the flow of life continuing. Like, even like if you don't believe in God per se, you'll believe in something propelling and carrying forward. That's really what I see. and NJs, because
most NJs that I know, at least, that are not religious or spiritual, they really believe in like nature. Like they believe
the SE of nature.
Yeah, like they
a
believe
hike
in nature, you know.
Yeah, seriously. Anyways, I think a lot of NPs on the internet will be like, oh my gosh, like Megan's like okay, in real life, and otherwise people
You should compare the real life and internet. That'd be so interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, in real life, people might NPs that you've been involved with.
You should explain the NP perception of me in real life before you go into that.
Oh gosh, let me think.
Or like in real life, like what in your experiences, Crystal and I know like all the same people.
Like like a little dramatic. Like sometimes gets on a soapbox. I'm not really sure what she's saying, but yeah, I guess society is like needing to change. Sometimes will look at me confusedly when I think I'm making perfect sense. Sometimes seems slow, but then will be unexpectedly super smart. So she's probably just hiding her thoughts. Seems to see like what I was saying earlier about like how you'll seem like slow or like dumb or not there, but then bam, like the wisdom comes out. Like that NE is not keeping track of, and I might be slow building, like slowly coming to a conclusion, and then it's like so airtight. Like
even if you watch this video, I kind of started off not saying much, and then now I've been like, whoa, guys.
Yeah, you just like cut me off like 5 times. I'm like, ooh, there she's back. Like before, I'm like, why? Like I don't know what I said that like somehow, like it feels more like in the flow now. But like NPs don't pay attention to the flow, so we're just like, Megan seems upset, but she's also being quiet. Is she upset? Like if you're being quiet because your NI is processing, we're like, hello, like nah, is like how NPs feel in like real life. But once you're like excited about something, you won't stop talking, which might make an NP be like, she seems like a P because she's talking a lot now. Then you'll like stop. So like to us, NJs seem to have an inconsistent way of engage. When I say engaging, I mean like literally how much they're talking, how happy they feel about talking, like all of that. NPs are picking up on that, and they're all like, huh? Like, and I think this is like also like other INFJs I know that we both know, people have said this about them too. They're like, sometimes they just don't talk and don't seem interesting. Like they're like, you don't see they like
an INFJ that I'm dating like actually does this way more than me. Well, though, like I feel like be all the way there or like not want to talk for hours, and then like and then like hit me up like text super fast like hello hi
you do that too, but like maybe okay, like in the external world you aren't necessarily talking less, but I'll feel like you're not there as much, and therefore don't seem as interested, and that like annoys the fuck out of me at times, to be honest. But yeah, like I think that like NPs will just have split perceptions of you / other NJs. They'll be like, sometimes they're the most interesting person I've ever met. Sometimes they're so boring seeming. Sometimes they are like slow. Sometimes they're so fast that even I can't keep up with them. Like we are always like keeping track of the energy. Exactly. Like, but we're like, aren't we in control of our energy levels? Because that's what SI believes. SI is like, if you ate enough, slept enough, thought enough, peed enough, then you'll have the energy. But I think NI is
peed enough. I kind of have to go to the bathroom, but I don't want this to be over. So do you want to just like go on a rant for a sec? I'll let you do it.
Oh my God, yeah.
On my own channel. I'll be right back.
Oh my God. Oh, Megan's handing over control of her channel. See, that's something I would never do. Like, I just feel like the possibility that this person is going to be like say something really damaging would just paranoid the fuck, like make me so paranoid. But the fact that she just like left and was like, the NI will flow, it will just flow, is so weird. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, SI is so like conscious of all of our lived experiences and what tied us together in the past. They don't know what the future is, so we're like really paranoid about that. But NJs just like have this kind of confidence in them where they don't think they need to like take up space and talk to you if there's a person there. The energy does not compel them.
Totally, I exactly agree. Whatever she just said, that is exactly what I was thinking.
I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, because I didn't
hear what you were saying, but
you just knew it was. A valid point. I look forward to you rewatching this later and be like, whoa, I guess that didn't make sense, because I'm feeling it would make sense to you. Okay. But on the internet, okay, people and users think Meghan is every type but an NFJ, because she's using like her intellectual side, and everything she's saying is something she's thought about for so long. But if you met her in real life as a stranger, you might not necessarily be on the same wavelength. She's not going to be like a super chatty, like ENFP like me. I'm always chatty to everyone I meet, like universally. But on the internet, Meghan might seem like more of like this like stern intellectual who like blah, 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 flows out about all these things he's learned about the types. But she's not going to just bring that to the surface and just start talking about types in a nerdy way when you first met me.
I got a comment the other day that said, I think that you're a 3-wing 2 on the Enneagram and not a 2-wing 3 because you seem more competent than most 2s.
No, and I user would ever go and say, I think you're this, unless they asked you. Like,
yeah, and then that person was like, most 2s seem more emotional and whiny about things. And I was just sort of like, well, I don't share that on the internet. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't, like, to be candid, you can be totally emotional.
Oh, absolutely.
I am such
a stereotypical too. If you look at why did all my past relationships end, read the unhealthy 2s, like that's what happened. Like, I don't know.
But like you're not gonna share, like, and I users are just gonna be like, so do you want to hear all about the ways I'm a 2? Like they're not gonna just do that. They're just
because I don't feel like I have to prove
be that. You are that. Like, you be that and people will know, but then NPs think, oh, because I saw one video of her, I know so much about her, which is
I think that NE users feel like they have to like control your perception by being like, oh, there's this, just in case you don't believe me, blah, 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 blah. I don't feel the need to like really convince anyone or really prove anything to anyone. I feel like as long as I'm embodying myself, that of course different videos are going to show different sides and like different points I'm making are going to show different sides. Like I just like know that I'm a I'm a multifaceted person and everyone is. And so just because you see one view of me one day doesn't mean that that's I don't know.
I think also something NPs have complained about before is that NJs can seem kind of uncouth, very crude, like very like soulless, I think almost, because you'll like kind of say this is just how it is, like bluntly with SE. I'm trying to think of an example, but I just know that
there's an example actually, like in my video I recently made about NTPs and how I made a video recently explaining like every time that I've gotten in a disagreement with an NTP where they have been like, oh, you're mad, you're taking it personally. I explained in the video, the purpose of the video, the point of the video was that, hey, I'm actually not mad. Whenever I pull away because you did something to me, I'm actually judging your behavior and I actually disdain your behavior. Not you. I'm not mad.
Like jumping away.
Yeah, and so, but anyway, I was explaining that. And then someone, I don't know what their type was, but someone was saying that they couldn't even finish my video because it seemed like I was saying that I believe in like an eye for an eye, like in that, that if someone's mean to me, that I'm going to be mean back. And I understand completely why they got that because I didn't really explain that enough. Like I said something I think like, oh, if someone challenges me, I'm not afraid to challenge them back. But I didn't explain like, oh, but this is how I challenge you. Like I think NE like tries to like control like how those are. And so, but for me, as long as my word choice makes sense to me, I always like I'm not really thinking about like, I'm thinking about what I meant by it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Can you explain like what I'm saying like in an NE way?
I think like sometimes when people pick up on those things, they're assuming you're a P and you're being ruled by FI and TI when really they just see your NI deciding that it's not a good idea anymore to be around this person because energetically you feel repelled. I think an NP might not like, okay, when I say energetically, I don't mean like in a spiritual way. I just mean like, and I just react off some kind of weird, like inner, like,
well,
inner
I guess
thing.
Like, for example, like my word choice, like whenever I say something
cut me off. I was going to get to the punchline of,
sorry.
I think a lot of NPs don't realize that they're reacting to something that they contributed to. when you go away, they just assume you operated off your own emotion, like in an FI and TI way.
Yeah.
When really it was your NI that felt like it was time to remove yourself. And that person added to that. So that's something I had to learn. Well, because my SE isn't that good, but I really think NPs should.
I don't understand. Can you re-explain like what you had to learn?
I had to learn that like sometimes when someone's become crude suddenly or become rude suddenly, who like might be an NJ, that they're not actually just mad at me and like hate me now like the way maybe an NP would. It's actually that they suddenly feel compelled to say something harsh or go away from me, and I might have put out something that made them do that. Like it's like
in the SE, yeah.
Yes, in the SE, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I think you wouldn't understand, like how an NP wouldn't react to SE, but we don't. So we have to learn to like keep that in mind. But keep going with what you were saying before.
That's really interesting to me. Do NPs or do people that don't use NI not realize that they are adding to the energy, like that they're adding to the exchange? Like, okay, because I guess what I was just going to explain to you is that, for example, my word choice wasn't precise enough in an all-encompassing way whenever I was explaining myself. I know what I meant by the word challenge or whatever word I chose. I can't even remember. And as long as I know what I meant, that's really all I'm happy with. And anyone with NI can watch what I said and come up with the conclusion of what I meant by that, based on how I'm
context,
based on how I'm being, not based on how their SI interprets the words I'm saying.
Or like the NE possibilities of what that word could mean and like choosing what interpretation it was. SE is going to be like on one train and be like, okay, that's what you meant.
Well, I think that SI and NE will get confused by a word choice I said and then think that I'm one way, but no NI and SE user, they would look at me and they would see what I'm embodying and they would know what I meant by it.
Yeah, I don't know what the word embody even really means. Like, I don't know.
For example, like maybe I'll say some words and some NP might think I'm mad. But no SP has ever done that to me before, because SPs will see if I'm speaking from a place of empowerment, then I'm not being defensive. Mm-hmm. My words I'm using might remind you of someone that's being defensive, but it takes NI to see that person is speaking from a place of empowerment and not from a place of And see, that's the thing with these functions, is that they're always attached to, like, NI is always attached to SE. It's impossible to just look at NI without SE. SE knows all about power. It knows all about force. It is present with what is. And so NI inherently knows things like power dynamics, things like how energy moves, because it's all connected to SE. And so, like, NI will look at, like, what energetic place were you coming from? Were you coming from a place of power, or were you coming from a place of weakness when you're talking? Were you coming from a place of good intent or bad intent?
I am bad at noticing those kinds of things, not gonna lie.
And I've also had some NPs about that video be like, I don't know why you did this video. All it is going to make people mad, because all they saw was that my word choice might be triggering to some. But they weren't seeing that the place that I was coming from was a place of love. And I don't think that any NI user would get confused, because if I'm coming from a place of love, it's going to be obvious I'm coming from a place of love, in my opinion. I don't ever feel like I have to explain that. And I think that NI is so confident and certain of the position that it's coming from. Like, if I am, and like for job interviews, for example, if I am confident, I don't have to try and look like I'm confident. I know that if I'm confident, I'm going to look.
I have a hard time trusting that. I think people get me wrong, even if I'm not being something. I think people will just assume something.
There was one.
I don't think the truth will stand.
Yeah, there was one time where Crystal was accused of like gossiping about something in a job interview, and she wasn't doing it, but she still acted as if she did it. And I was so confused by her, because I was like, you didn't do anything wrong, so why are you acting like you did?
Because I was afraid that someone else would think that I was doing something wrong, and I'd have to act a certain way to make them not think that anymore. So
yeah,
like,
and whenever I'm accused of something I didn't do or anything like that, I'm just like, oh well, I didn't do that, or like, oh, I don't know, like,
you just try to like think that it is what it is will be apparent, but end users are like, no, like shit can and could happen to
and
make
he knows that
not
people.
happy.
I think that what you were worried about is not. You were worried. You knew that looking like you did it was worse than doing it in a way.
Yes.
And the SE is
and
if
that
you
was
did
my
it
word against theirs. Like I was like, how the fuck am I gonna convince my fucking school that I didn't do that when their like professional reputation is at stake? What happened doesn't matter. I think end users kind of think that like
and I think what happened didn't matter because like I would have come if I was accused of doing something I didn't do and there was no cameras, I would just be like, look, I don't know what to tell you. All I can say is that I didn't do it. So what do you want from me? Like I would just be very much like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the attitude would be maybe convincing though in of itself, because you'd be so like nonchalant and like annoyed, and that would like show people in the SE and FE that you didn't do it. But I would be like so like not knowing how to be confident in that reality that I would just be like, fuck.
Yeah, and I mean INFJs and INTJs would respond this way too. They just might not be as forthright as I am. But like,
ENJ, I think an ENTJ might also be like you.
Oh yeah, an ENTJ. Okay, if you accuse an ENTJ or an ENFJ of doing something that they didn't do, they're gonna just be very like, okay, where's your proof? Because I know I didn't do it. Like, and like if you gave them proof, they'd like debunk it or whatever. But like, and I feel like an INJ might be even more nonchalant in a way of like, I don't feel guilty, so you aren't gonna make me feel guilty.
Yeah, seriously.
Like,
I
feel like NI is a very sovereign function. It knows its own sovereignty. I don't know if that makes sense.
I feel like it's like hard for me to convey like what I know about NI and like interact with it, because so much of like my understanding of NI is through like lived experiences that I can't even like recall now, which in
you know what? In everything I say about NI, I feel like is going to trigger NPs because they are upset.
Yes, I'm so aware of that right now.
That's like, they are upset that they don't have this function, and they still are clinging on to the belief that it is possible for them to be this way when it is not. What is your response to that? Because there are times, and I know I'm being very harsh right now, but this is my truth and I'm sharing. It's like, there are certain things where, okay, I was about to actually say that NI users know who they are in relation to the SE, the world. They know this is my energy, this is your energy, and they know they have control over their energy. If I were to say that that is an NI thing, then all the NE users that are working towards being more that way are going to be really triggered and upset, because they want to believe that they eventually will feel in control of themselves in the same way that they've seen NI and SE users.
Yeah, but feel like held back by SI. That
they're hanging on to the belief that it is possible for their NE to do that when it's not. You're going to have to do your own way.
To be fair though, like there is a way to relatively be more that than you are now.
Yes.
But it's like literally the same as like an FE user wishing they always knew exactly what they were feeling, exactly what it is. And an FI user would be like, no, you don't. Like,
in my opinion, it's a workaround where, like, for example, my FE sometimes wishes that I was stronger with FI, because that way I would, put my own needs first more. Well, I'm never going to be an FI user, but I can use my FE to mitigate the problems that too much FE has.
Yeah.
So NE users.
Wait. Yeah, I have a concept to put forward.
Mm-hmm.
You've made fun of me before for my attitude toward life being that I think everyone's better than me because I think they're an ENFP plus. I think it's easy for. And when I say ENFP plus, don't interrupt me. When I say ENFP plus, I mean like thinking that everyone who doesn't have my functions has everything I have because of my functions and more. So it's like, I think NE users look at what NI has and they think that NI users have what NE has. Well, that's not true. So look at it this way, like NI users, I think NPs are guilty of looking at NI as so black and white, like completely inferior to their function or completely superior to their function.
Yes.
Not. So it's like NI, what it has that's better than us NE users is it has certainty in its reality, whatever that may be. It has certainty in it because it's built that up over time. It's an archive of every intuitive impression that you've believed over time adding up. We don't keep track of intuitive impressions that way. We do sensory, so we're different. So it has certainty. It has the ability to observe phenomenon on a wide scale that's like very intuitive in nature. So it's not going to accept every possibility as valid. It's going to be very good at picking and choosing the ones that matter and the ones that will have the most impact in the intuitive realm in the world. And I is very powerful for that. It'll also be good at like keeping like a linear narrative of like an intuitive theory you have. It'll be able to like really go deeper and connect it. It's going to be a little less apologetic about if someone challenges its reality. It's not going to, unless you are mean, it's not going to like feel triggered by someone insinuating something. And seriously, the lack of paranoia is like really envious. I agree. But what it doesn't have is,
can I share an example, or should I wait until you're done with this part?
You can share an example, but don't go too far.
Okay, an INFJ I know that was in a relationship with an ENTP. An INFJ just broke up with the ENTP, and the ENTP has then accused her of things like, oh, you lied, oh, you did this, oh, you did this, oh, you were bad in the relationship, oh, I regret dating you, oh, blah, 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 all these things. And the INFJ has just been like, I didn't do anything wrong besides not want to date you. That's all I did. And the INFJ was hurt by the interaction, but the INFJ knew that I didn't do anything wrong besides not want to date you. And so all of these things that you're accusing me of, that's not true. And so the INFJ did not let themselves feel guilty about the things that the NE user was trying to project. And so whether the NI user or whether the INFJ was right or wrong or being completely honest, maybe the NE user was seeing something that the INFJ was doing that she wasn't aware of, you know, but that was just an example.
Yeah. So I think, okay, like there's, before I get into the good parts, there's two benefits to being overly paranoid.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a segue. So in that example, it like, projecting is something I know NEsers do a lot that can be good and bad. It's not just bad or good. I know like some people are triggered by the word projecting because it sounds like we're just crazy, and that's honestly our biggest fear, but it can be a good thing too. Let's start with the bad though. So an example of where I got accused of doing something I did not do, all my S I could think of was thinking of the other side of why it looked like I was doing that. I knew every single clue someone had to have to make that impression of me, which was a very NE impression that I was talking shit. So I felt helpless to fight against those. And so I started getting like, for me, because I'm an NFP, not an NTP, I get internally defensive and beat myself up for being stupid, and I can't even like accuse other people of lying, which is what I would have to do to defend myself. And, you know, like you said, the NTP, they also were like, you know, like they started like questioning their reality, or at least aware that their realities were different, and like didn't know how to fight against those. NI users, they know what they know, and they don't care what other people know. They just trust that. That's good. But on the other hand, NI users can also be very naive about sometimes when something looks bad, and they might not take mitigative like measures to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. NE users, paranoia can be a good thing. And it can, like, you know, help us foresee things that other people can't. Sometimes we're
I have a really good example. So back in the wild, do you want to know why we evolved to have NE guys? If any of you NE users are feeling sad about yourself or whatever. Okay.
Been there.
If you were in the wild and you were walking along as a caveman and you heard something that sounded like the wind, the SE user would keep walking because it sounds like wind, it's wind. But the NE user would be like, what if there was a predator there? And the NE user looks, and the NE user would survive. Okay? The NE user would survive whether there's a predator there or there's not. It doesn't matter. The NE user is always checking. And maybe the SE user would actually survive the fight or something because they're more physical or something. But like the NE user, that's a good thing. Like, we live in a modern world and there's not as many like bad things that could happen randomly. And so I think that can make the modern NE user really stressed out. Right? Like, yeah. But
I think, like, that's such a good analogy. I think that SE user can get themselves not literally killed, but like in hot water at times when it comes to not being aware of how something looks. Like,
yeah, or how other people see it. Yeah.
Like if someone, I can't think of an example instead of like the most dramatic ones
like
possible.
When Shane Dawson got accused of being a pedophile when he's not. He's
just like, I'm not. Yeah, and like an NP would be like, don't do that action because it could look like you're a pedophile. Mm-hmm. And SEs are like careless and then like get themselves in trouble, have to backtrack and don't convince people enough because they don't feel the need to convince people. And users are aware of the pulse of every possibility, and that makes sure we get our bases covered. Sometimes if we go over the top and we accuse people of things that we don't have that much evidence for, it's not good. But everything needs to be in moderation. Like, I think that S users need to understand the value of sometimes NE will see something that they don't. Sometimes NE users need to be like, sometimes people are right and we're wrong, and they know themselves more than we know them. So
this is a huge pet peeve for NI users, is that whenever people think that they know what's best for us more than we do. Like, whether you're an NFJ or an NTJ, no NI user is going to like whenever people think that they're seeing a more clear picture about you.
Yes. And especially, I think a pet peeve.
Go ahead.
I think a pet peeve of NE users is whenever reality itself comes up against what we believe, which is all the time, because we have horrible.
NI is so, like, to live with NI, especially as an NJ, is to feel so painfully self-aware in so many ways. And that's not really good or bad. Like, if you are an NJ, you're probably so painfully self-aware that you might be afraid to act, or you might be afraid to try new things that are outside of who you are, because that's not you. For example, ever since I was a kid, I loved singing, and I was not a great artist, like drawing. And so I don't even dare draw or doodle, because I know that's not what I am. That's not me. But NE users will do things that they aren't. They'll try things on to grow, to be a more well-rounded person. And NI users might be afraid to do things that aren't who we are. Like, I don't know how to say it in a not spiritual way, but I think that NI is like the soul and SI is like the body in a way. Like, SI knows about the body, and NI knows about the energy that is in that body. Mm-hmm. So
I think NI is very gut and NE is very head, and like very like there's everything always going up here that we don't listen to this enough. Listens to this doesn't know what's up here all the time.
For those of you who are into the chakras, I think that NI is the third eye and NE is the crown. So if you don't know what that is and you're curious, look it up. But I think that those are the two ways we have intuition. Like,
it's funny because I think NE is the third eye and NI is the crown.
Really?
That downloads all the information, you know? And NE is like seeing everything. Like, doesn't really know.
I guess you guys can decide for yourself, since we disagree. But I mean, I think
NE and NI.
I think of the crown as you being one with all, like all intuition, and NI being my intuition. So that's what
I guess. My third eye is like into the realm, but I think it depends, right? Because maybe you think NE's up here and NI's here, and I think NE is here and NI's up here.
Oh yeah, maybe that's because of it's what you use. Because
because to me, for both of us, we think, oh, the other function is the higher one, the better one, like downloading things, and we're like, here's me. So that's interesting.
Funny. Interesting.
But yeah,
I don't know, but anything else that you think are big misunderstandings about NI that I can clarify before we end this?
I'm just so aware that like the ongoing process of the internet trying to understand NI with NI users being bad at explaining it and
Yes!
users explaining it wrong. It just like that's why.
NI doesn't know how to explain it, and NE explains it wrong. And also NE gets bored of trying to get it exact.
Yeah, like I'm literally a little afraid that like no NP will have gotten through this whole thing because the beginning was so like on different wavelengths. Yep. But oh well. If you got through this, let us know what you think, I guess.
Yeah, comment below if you are an NP and you listen to
and also comment below, maybe if you're an NP or suspect you're an NP, direct your comments toward me as opposed to attacking Meghan and being a total dick NTPs and calling you out. Sorry, I don't have any FE to offer.
I've decided that I just need to realize that like people are like I need to just start saying what I think, because I think that that's a huge thing. Is a lot of times NI doesn't want to share all the way if it's not sure.
Doesn't want to share prematurely. Yeah.
I think I just need to share it and then like kind of know and expect that NE users aren't going to see it the same way. But at least the more I do it, then the more I'm going to refine how I word it. If you go back to some of my older videos, you'll know that I haven't always been the best at explaining what I'm trying to say. But
oh my gosh, yes.
I'm going to be able to practice is by doing
every time you guess, Meghan, you've never been wrong. Like, you know, like every time you've said something before you feel 100% NI sure about it, you've never been wrong. So like what take that. Like, I just think that you haven't said anything that's wildly inaccurate before to TE. Like, you know, that's just kind of what I see. Because then I'll ask you more questions and you'll just end up backing up anyway. So don't be afraid to, like, just say it, yay, without, like, wondering if it's going to make sense. Because, yeah.
The thing is, to wrap it up, like, NI, it's like any intuitive function is hard to explain because it's more than what meets the eye. So when you mix intuition with introvertedness, it is more than what meets the eye, and it's deep and it's within. And so
so many things.
There's a reason why there's a reason why not everyone is an NJ, because the world would not go on. There's NJs are the rarest types because we only need some visionaries. We don't need everyone to be a visionary. And I'm not saying that NPs aren't visionaries, but the way I see it is I see NPs as way more like jack of all trades, creatives, freedom, like free thinkers, like living their lives as they please. They aren't. NJs are more of the visionaries, whether they're extrovert or introvert. Do you agree, Crystal? Or how would you explain that to someone that is like having difficulty accepting that?
Well, I think NJs are visionaries that don't know how to execute it well at times because they're so single-handedly focused and they don't think about all the SI details they're missing out on. And NPs on the other hand will take care of those details, but maybe not have the steady, consistent vision. So remember that. It's not like NJs are NE+. Please do not think that. That is something that has tripped me up in my understanding before.
Yeah.
No one's superior. Trust me. NJs struggle with not being able to generate shit.
Something that I think true. So true. Something that I really think is that NJs are the best leaders, but that it's more likely for NPs to show up as leaders because they will just sort of throw themselves in it or something like.
Yes, NJs are the best leaders if they ever so get to that point.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get tripped up with the SI. Yeah, so like.
There are a lot, and I don't know, like, I know I'm talking about this a lot, but I just feel like there are so many celebrities that are NJs that are mistypes. That people don't know that they're NJs. Like, for example, I said Shane Dawson, who is a popular YouTuber, I think is one of the most obvious examples of an ENFJ out there. People don't see it. I think that people project onto NJs a lot because... You
know why they do that? It's because they don't use NE to defend themselves.
They don't what?
They don't use NE to defend themselves.
Yeah.
To tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah, and they don't really care. They just are themselves. I don't know, like another example, like Jimmy Fallon, I think is an ENFJ, and a lot of people think that he is an NP. I mean, I think Fred Armisen is an ENFJ. I think...
It's like how people don't think you're an ENFJ when they just watch your videos, but then if they met you in real life, they'd be like, huh? What a wallflower.
I don't think anyone would not think I was an ENFJ if they met me in real life, because I think that I'm such a fucking stereotype. But I don't know, like, I just think that it's a huge struggle for NI users to get their NI out there because you have to believe in yourself. And that's really hard no matter what type you are. But nothing, and okay, this is another thing I want to stress that I know that Dave Superpowers, shout out, always talks about, is that nothing that I can do, nothing that an NI user can do is something that an NE user can't do. And I know that I sort of explained earlier that you won't be it. Okay. No NE user will ever be an NI user, but an NE user can do all the things that NI users do. And there's a huge distinction there that I want to explain, is that whenever I say things like NJs are better leaders, what I really mean is that NJs are born leaders. They are leaders. NE users can be leaders. They don't have the same sort of, I just kind of am based on who I am thing, but anyone could be anything. A feeler can use TE to start a business. A thinker can tell, a TJ can tell their significant other, I love you, with FE. Like, we all can do everything. Okay, so don't get all offended whenever I'm saying that, oh, these are all things that NI users do, because
it's
I think
predispositions as opposed to like what you could grow into.
Yes, and another thing is, like, I think that NI is rare, and so more people have weak NI than strong NI. And so I think whenever I say these things are under the domain of NI, people get upset because it's all, most of the time, they're weak spots. And they're like, no, I can do that too. And so they get upset about it.
Also, I realize a lot of NJs are going to be like, are NJs really that rare? Because all these celebrities being NJs, what? But then it's like, well, the NJs kind of rise to the top. Think of all the people in the workforce out there.
Well, you have to remember, NJs are not great entry-level workers. And so a lot of them have had to learn, like, okay, I'm a really shitty worker in this way, so I have to figure out how I can live and survive. And NJs are really bad at SI things. They're really bad at showing up on time and organizing their sensory world and all those things. And so a lot of them end up performers or like visionaries of some sort. And they're not better than you. They're just doing what they are. And I don't know, like, I just feel like it's so hard to say a real description of what NI is, because no matter what I say, people are going to think it's too much of a sweeping statement or whatever. But it's like, NI users out there, I would say we should band together and start to own these things that NI users are, that SI users are not. And that's another reason why
I agree.
Seem black and white. Do you have anything to say about people that say that NI users seem black and white?
Besides the SEF don't think that way, no. Because
Did you used to think that?
Yes, definitely.
So can you explain your perception now?
I think my perception now is that, like, and gosh, this is hard because now I have NI about NI. So, like, what is it, right?
I'm stressed out right now, and I keep like not wanting to end the video because I know that I haven't explained it all the way, but maybe I'll always feel that way.
I think NE is like, for the ideal state for NE to accept NI is to accept that some things don't need to be justified or explained. They just are, which is like so SE and NI, it hurts. So I think it's like being curious about that there's always more than meets the eye, including your own eye, is something that really helped me. I think it's like, I cannot generalize about NI from a first glance. I have to always be checking my impressions and checking if the original.
I think that NE users think that NI is black and white whenever they are only noticing the SE and not the NI.
Yes.
Because NI is not black and white, but SE kind of is. So
yeah. I think SE without SI is black and white, because SPs I think are good at explaining themselves in a way where people don't get on them or misunderstand them as much as NJs, because I think they can like use SI to kind of like skirt around things and like not run into trouble. I think NJs are so disregarding how things have always been, and I think that triggers people in a lot of ways because we cling on to comfort in this world, and NJs are never about comfort.
And I also want all of you NJs listening to know to not get too cocky about your abilities, because even though you're rare, you still have to convince the world that you're useful. You have to figure out how to explain it.
I'm super aware. Yeah. I'm super aware this video is divisive. Yes. I'm super aware this video is like all the the ENFJs will be like, oh, this makes sense. And all the NPs will be like, what the fuck have you guys been yapping about for an hour? And that stresses me out too to think about. I think like a willingness to accept. I think both NPs and NJs have to become more humble to get each other. NPs have to be more humble.
Because would you?
I think you always have to ask.
Go ahead.
Huh? I would say like something that helped me as an NP was, am I being humble right now? It's like almost NI to ask yourself that, am I being this right now? Like
I'm going to get myself coffee. So this is going to be the closest thing to a vlog you've ever seen. Anyway, so would you say that some NE users are hesitant to believe in NI because of how NI users talk about themselves?
Yes. Yes, completely. Like in that INFJ example with that ENTP, something about the way she conveyed it probably rubbed that ENTP the wrong way. Because I also think like INTJs, I think it's maybe like also, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, I think NJs just sometimes disregard the SI of like easing into it, as we said in the last video. Like they don't know how to be tactful sometimes while conveying the harsh truth.
Actually, this is really interesting. An ISTP that I used to be friends with, even though he uses NI, he said something to me once where he said that it seemed like I was always snatching the baby blanket from the baby or something like that, which is still like a kind of NI way to explain it.
I know. I was like, that in of itself is so NI.
But like,
but yes, it is.
As an ISTP has stronger SI than me, and so it hurt him whenever I would just bulldoze over and completely neglect SI. That felt like snatching a security blanket or like a comfort.
Yeah. Everyone has their security blankets. And I think NJs don't honor that, and that removes society from. But that also can like make people mad.
Yeah, it does. It makes people mad.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I know we've just been kind of talking about this for a bit, but I guess I want to end this on like some advice. Like, I know that you feel misunderstood. Whether you're an SP or whatever, anyone that uses NI, even some NPs that might be listening and said, I don't relate to this all the time, but there has been times when I have felt like I'm using NI. Right, Crystal? Mm-hmm. Like, because you kind of relate, because as an ENP, like you according to socionics, like that you do have strong NI, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so some of you NP, especially ENPs, you might be confused by this because you might sometimes relate to what I'm saying or whatever. But like NI, I know
it will fluctuate though. Like any NJ will never relate to an NE user, but NE users can relate to both because they are the experience.
That is so true.
Yes.
Wait, do you think that judging functions do that? Like the FE users FE users can understand other feelings, but that FI users can at least understand theirs.
I think, okay, how about this? FI users always understand their feelings before everyone else's. FE users can like understand their own sometimes, other people's, but FI will always have it. Same with NI. NI will have its impression. NE will be swimming in other impressions. Its own, other people's, blah, blah, blah. It will switch off. FE can do that too.
Oh, I spilled. Whoops, bad SI. All in a day's work. Always spilling things. And that's another thing about NI.
So weird, because even though I'm clumsy, I don't spill things super often.
I literally spill things all the time.
I'll be like, I'll see it coming, which is like another metaphor for NE and I. I'll like see I'm about to trip and then trip and be like, nothing could have stopped.
Introverted sensing knows who it is in relation to the other sensory objects. And so it will know how far away the cup is from the milk than me, or like something like that. SI users have a better understanding of that relationship. But in the same way, NI has an understanding energetically of like, okay, NI is like, this is my YouTube channel, and so I'm exerting more authority than maybe you talking, because that's true. Like, it's my channel. You know what I mean? And so I'm aware of like the energetic relations here. That doesn't make me higher or or whatever. It just like in the SE is that this is my channel. And so I'm positioning myself in a position relative to you. I'm the host, you're the guest, even though everything that she's saying is just as amazing as what I'm saying. In the SI, we're sharing like maybe the same amount, but in the NI is a different, I don't know if that even made sense.
That makes sense.
But, so yeah, okay. I was getting, I know I'm so annoying right now, but okay.
Oh, well, I don't think so.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
go on.
What I want to say is that NI, I know that you feel misunderstood, and it's because you are, but NI, it is on you to make yourself be understood. Mm-hmm. It is not the NE user's fault or whenever they misunderstand you. Now, I need to realize this too. I get upset whenever people just blatantly, oh, you're saying this, and they start arguing a point that I didn't even make because it was similar to the point. It was in the same category as the point. NE will like put things in categories. I will get really upset and really hurt when people misunderstand me, or whenever my good intent isn't loud and clear. The INFJ,
and you guys feel this way about feelings too. More
the
than
INFJ like that I'm dating, like sometimes I'll say like, "Oh, I'm having trouble trusting you," and then they're like, "Well, why? I'm really trustworthy." And like not like understand like.
Oh my God! Whenever I listen to that, I cringe because I'm like, it doesn't matter what you think they are; they think you're that. So you gotta like, exactly. Why would you say like I don't know if I can trust you? Well, I'm trustworthy, so you should. Like what? No, like
yeah,
what? Like when NJs do that, I'm just like, oh my God.
Like they're like, oh, but like almost offended that I misinterpreted the intention. Where they were
You've
coming
been
from.
offended before too, Megan.
Yes, I have, and I have been. And even the times when I have like gotten in internet fights or whatever, it's because it's like, how come you don't know how much I love you? Why is it not obvious how? Why is it not obvious that I have a good intent here, guys? I love you. Like I'm just upset that it's not obvious. Your little rolling your eyes, but like that's the thing. NI is that it's not on them to see you. You have to be seen. You have to put yourself in the SE.
Yeah.
Especially INJ. It's not Crystal's fault that she misinterpreted me when we first met. All she was doing was using her. She was just being herself. Like, why would I don't know. Like,
it's funny because I think NJs also envy NPs and how
they
don't care if people get them wrong, and almost by that logic, people don't. And I think NJs kind of wish they were as free as us. So that's something I've noticed. And I'm like jealous here of like how NJs have a consistent perception of the world. I don't, but grass is always greener.
So I'm going to end this with some advice. So like I just said, advice for NI users. You need to make yourself be known. You need to figure out how to communicate yourself because it's not other people's problem that they misunderstand you. You have to also acknowledge to yourself that you are different. Like you are a rarer function. That's just how the universe was made. You're not better or worse than anyone, but you are different. And so you have to understand that other people aren't just going to magically understand you. You have to figure out how to explain it. You can't just sit there like, I don't know. Like, you can't just do that because people aren't going to understand you. And so that's on you. That is your responsibility. And so, and don't take it personally when people misunderstand you because, you know, maybe they aren't seeing as deeply as you. They aren't. But what is your advice for NE users that misunderstand NI, Crystal?
Well, in my head, there's like two flavors of NPs that misunderstand NJs. The patient ones who are curious and really self-righteous, indignant ones. The patient ones keep doing what you're doing because you're at least learning and being open-minded, and the functions will help with that.
Cough, cough.
The impatient ones, you just don't even know enough NJs, I feel like. You like look at Meghan as like an exception to a rule of everyone being the same in the SI, but try and just think like 3 or 4 examples of NJs in your life. Don't think, whoa, freak accident, she's just a weird person. Like, think about all the like patterns you've seen in how people are apparently getting mad at you, probably NJs of some sort, and try and learn from those mistakes. Try and think about what behaviors you can do that will piss them off less. NE, we are good at brainstorming. Just try and think of NJs as just another type, like how there's blondes and brunettes and blah, 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 like all these things. Like, I think NPs sometimes will get stuck and be really rude to, like, an SE user because they'll think you're the only person that doesn't use NE in this room or in this world, but that is not true. Try and just use your NE to imagine or go in your SI and think about people.
And as opposed to some more advice for that specific person you're referring to, as opposed to thinking about, do I know any NJs? Think about, have I reacted to anyone this way before?
Yeah, that's more accurate. Because I think trying to think of NJs, you might accidentally think of some NPs as NJs. And think
also,
of the emotional.
Uh-oh. Is she gone? Oh, she's back.
No, I just got a call, so I'm back.
Oh, okay. Think about the emotional.
I was going to say, think about, like, the emotional reactions as a way of identifying NJs, as opposed to trying to, like, think that, oh, that person seems intuitive, so they're an NJ. Think of, like,
another thing is that a lot of NPs will ask me whenever I use examples of, like, did you make that person take the test? And, like, no, like, NPs, if you're, like, wanting to figure out NJs, you aren't going to be able to have every single person that you've ever met take the test, but you can start to see noticeable differences of how people react to you and, like, use that as, like, your example.
Yeah, like, all NFPs will just so naturally get me. I don't have to explain my emotions much for them to be like, oh, that makes sense, you know? And I think that, like, trying to identify which functions in you are at work with certain mannerisms, and then identifying which people are reacting well or not well to those mannerisms, is how I learned to type. I did not rely on a test as an NP. Maybe we can video about this sometime. But
I just actually realized a huge thing is, as you were dividing these two people, I hate to say that you were dividing based on NFP and NTJ, but that's the division I see. Is that
NFP and NTP?
Yeah. Sorry. I think that NFPs, they don't get NI, but they're, like, curious, and so they make conclusions that are incorrect, but they kind of keep them to themselves until that's changed. But NTPs, since we talked about in our TI video that all TI knows that all things have a rationale, NTPs get mad that they don't see the rationale because they're like, I know there's a reason here, so tell me what it is. And if you can't tell them what it is, then they think that you're stupid because you must not have a reason.
Yes.
That doesn't
yes. Okay. I do agree with your assessment that there are distinct functions connected to if you're going to be agreeable or disagreeable. But to the NTPs out there, I will say not all NTPs are going to be disagreeable. Many of you will be very curious and nice and even more helpful than maybe an NFP might be, who just knows how to listen and such. But I will say that everyone who is disagreeable seems to tend to be an NTP, because I think NFPs don't have it in us. Yeah, I think NFPs have it in us enough to actually argue anyone's reality. We might secretly be like, you're confusing. Is there a rhyme?
That's not 100% true. I realize that there are, like, NPs, especially INFPs on the internet, that they won't say it to someone's face, but they'll say, I don't like ENFJs, they're pushy, or I don't like INFJs because they always remind me of blah, blah, blah. And so, like, yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm talking in broad generalizations here too. Mm-hmm. What I will say is, regardless if you use FI or TI, you will be able to know NPs if you're disagreeable when it comes to these kinds of things or agreeable. So try and be more agreeable. Do what it takes. You know how. You are a P. You have that introverted judging within you to fix your own behavior, which a lot of J's sometimes don't know how, sorry. But anyways, like, I don't think all NTPs are going to just be hostile and all NFPs are going to be super agreeable. I mean, I guess maybe I'd like to think NFPs are always agreeable, but, you know, there might be some salty NFPs.
You're right. And this is where my extroverted feeling that we'll talk about later in another video. FE makes sweeping generalizations because I'm noticing trends. Crystal doesn't want to say things that aren't all the way true.
Yeah, but I did notice that, though.
Yeah, what I said was a trend, but it's not all like a one-size-fits-all.
Like, I did think to say NTPs, NFPs, and I was like, well, I've seen so many exceptions, and
that's true.
I don't think that's the rule.
No, I don't think it's a rule either, and I think that my bad TE means that I say things that aren't rules because I don't even think about things as rules.
Yeah, notice I visibly got uncomfortable when you said that. I was like, I mean,
yeah, and
so,
I wasn't even thinking about imposing a rule. I was just like, oh, cool, guys, I found a trend.
Yes. Well, okay, here's the thing. There's the difference between saying the trend and then, or thinking the trend and then saying it and then qualifying it a lot, which is what TE does. Because I think a TE user wouldn't say you're wrong, but they might try to like almost sugarcoat it more so it applies to everyone. Because I know I'm thinking of all the friendly NTPs who were really nice to me after that TI video that I was so scared of everyone judging me for, and also all the mean NFPs I've met who have tried to seduce. Okay, never mind. But you know, so yeah. But anyways, I think my advice is NPs just expand the possibilities in your brain by thinking about your emotional reactions to people as opposed to like trying to like see what they are, try to feel what they are, or think TI, whatever, what they are. Like that might be a good way for you to figure out who's a P, who's a J, who's an NJ, who's an SJ, things like that. So yeah.
So would you advise NPs to stop jumping to conclusions about NJs, or do you think that the aspect of jumping to conclusions is so inherent in who they are that they shouldn't change?
It's so inherent that if you told someone to stop, they would almost do it more, is what I think for an NP. So what I will say is be more willing to challenge your conclusions and refine them. So it's like,
like
for an NTP, like you might conclude she's doing that, then hold out for more information and incorporate it more. But don't be like such an asshole about it. Be like, I could be wrong, but like just have an attitude of I could be wrong, but it seems this, which is very rarely actually that annoying.
That's so interesting.
When you're like, I don't think you're an N. Like you don't fucking know. Like
comment below if you guys agree with this one person that one time was commenting and saying I was an ESTJ.
That's an example of NI humor. That's like NI pointing out the absurdity. I don't comment about things
like NI humor. Oh, we should do a whole other episode about NI humor sometime.
I think it needs to be like a whole series of NI videos.
There definitely needs to be more about NI because
there's more to be said. We spent so much time talking about it, but we still haven't gotten to the point. That's like the most NI I'll be.
But this is an example of NI humor because to me, I'm like, look at the SE. I'm clearly not an ESTJ. And so for me to say it is humorous because I'm assuming that you see the same thing.
Yeah. And you also pulled out this one,
okay. Do you really think I'm an ESTJ? I don't know. I'm wearing this thing.
You also pulled out this like one example to like illustrate and like jokingly sum up this video, which is in response to the ESTJ. I don't know. I thought it was so funny. Like NI, like such NI humor.
Portlandia is such an NI show. It's my favorite show.
Oh my god!
So much good TV is NI. This is not a bulletproof thing, but if you're not like, I swear to God, that's like a way for me to know if someone is an NI user or not, is if they like that show. Like a lot of my NP friends are like, oh yeah, it's kind of funny. It's a little weird though.
Yeah, I'm from Portland. I don't think it's that funny. So.
Yeah, she thinks it's a disgrace to Portland, and the Beavertown episode just really was a disgrace to her hometown.
Beavertown's my suburbs, that's why it's funny to Megan. But my ENFJ friend from Portland, who I've actually seen this week, he loves that show, and I'm just like, he's like, it's so accurate. I'm like, we grew up in the same hometown. Like, I've known you for 20 years. Like, how the fuck did you get this impression that I didn't?
Total side note, but I think it's so annoying that apparently Portland is blaming Portlandia for their increase in rent prices and their increase in millennials moving there.
Because everyone's coming to Portland now. Like,
why don't you take a look at every mid-sized city in America, idiot? It's happening everywhere.
That's also an NI observation.
Yeah, it is. It is an NI observation. Like, why don't you get your head out of your ass and look at our culture?
Our next video should just be us talking and then us pointing to, oh, you just used blah 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 there. Oh, you just used there. And like that would annoy the shit out of everyone, but be really good. Like,
I'm sure there are some weirdos out there that would want to listen to it. But like, yeah, that is such an example of like an NI observation because the trend is that all millennials are moving into cities. That's not unique. And so sure, Portlandia has something to do with Portland, but even Kansas City didn't have a TV show. Kansas City rent prices are rising and there's nothing cool that happened here.
Summer breakfast is LA. What else is new? All right, I think we should end it here.
Okay, thank you so much.
Comment below if you got through this whole thing somehow.
Comment below and say you're an ESTJ if you watch the whole thing.
Okay, bye.
Bye.